There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
You will achieve many great things if you could peel away one of truth's hidden layers. That's a speech this guy gives standing in front of the top honor students of the country. Not, I went to the moon. He doesn't say that. He gives this cryptic speech.
To look into it.
Bill Clinton, in page 100, I think it's 156 of his book, My Life, he gives this story about how when he was a kid, he was working with this carpenter. And this carpenter said, you know, I don't believe man landed on the moon. It was 3 months after the moon landing. And he said, I thought that guy was ridiculous. He said, you know what? I don't believe anything those TV fellows show you. He said, after 8 years in the White House, I thought maybe that guy was ahead of his time.
A magic trick? No. Just the help of a wireman.
99, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector grid. X-Side.
With the exception of the manned lunar flights of the Apollo program, all human spaceflights have taken place in LEO or were suborbital.
Some of the video that Sebro has of them faking the distance between the Earth and the Moon when they're shooting the Moon, or the Earth rather, through a circular window in the lunar module.
There's so much fraud when you look into
Astronomy
it. I'm like, I don't
doesn't
trust
come from
shit. Look into it.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
You can see on the back of his shirt a couple of upticks on either side where you would expect wires to come in on either side of that harness.
The solar system. It's the next big step for NASA in exploration.
Called the Orion Multipurpose Crew Vehicle, or MPCV, this next-generation spacecraft will enable America to explore beyond low Earth orbit.
Absolutely. I am very convinced this is going to happen in my lifetime. I think it's incredibly exciting where SpaceX is going, where NASA is going, where all of the commercial crew efforts are going. We're really looking to maintain station as an orbiting laboratory, but we're also really pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit.
They're often portraying that this is live. Of course, these things are fully choreographed and edited in advance to make sure that there's nothing too obvious that you can see that gives away that this is a suspension in front of a blue screen hoax.
Why do you think the moon landing is real? Why don't you tell me why?
I saw it on television.
Oh, you're a genius. Oh, beep that. Hit
Okay,
that.
we'll bleep it. We'll bleep it. No, it's okay. We got
That's genius. You saw it on TV? That's awesome. I'm going to show you some CGI. I'm going to show you King Kong. I saw that on TV, too. There's an 80-foot gorilla. He's running around kidnapping white chicks.
How do you replicate microgravity here on Earth? NASA Glenn has been conducting microgravity experiments since the 1960s in drop towers like this. These facilities rely on free fall of the experiment to produce a microgravity environment. Here, NASA can test experiments in a reduced gravity environment, similar to orbiting in space.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
People think the Earth and the Moon look like this, when in reality, they look like this.
So it's that microgravity or micro-G condition of free fall that station exhibits. We can do the same thing with aircraft. The maneuver takes us approximately 8,000 to 9,000 vertical feet. We're going to climb at 45 to 52 degrees nose high. At near maximum airspeed. The parabolic, the top parabola, it prescribes a ballistic trajectory, a nice arc. There's no net G, so you get the free fall micro G.
And it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit.
The faking of spacewalks in a swimming pool. In this vid, you catch a glimpse of someone wearing a scuba tank. In 2013, a gallon of water leaked into one of their spacesuits in a matter of seconds. NASA doesn't really have a proper explanation for how on earth this could have happened.
And some scientists are worried that future space travel might be too risky if we get too much junk orbiting the planet. We might seal ourselves inside a shield of shrieking metal moving at 29,000 kilometers per hour.
Evidence, or I look at the fact that we haven't been back since 1972, when I look at the fact that no humans except the Apollo astronauts have ever gone through the Van Allen radiation belt, the fact that no one's even done a flyby around the moon since then, it seems weird to me. When I look at the press conference and I see Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins nervous and weird and obviously like being deceptive after they came back.
From Mark Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Yeah. Because you can see. Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon. The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon.
And the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
The sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas Magellan clouds of the Milky
you
Way
see
galaxy.
the Magellan.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
Then when you look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest black you can imagine.
And the most frightening darkness that you could ever imagine.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
The sky, of course, was black, but it had sort of a velvet sheen to it.
The biggest visual surprise was just how black the sky was. You have a brilliant sun, brighter than any sun you normally would see, even here in New Mexico. You have these extraordinarily high mountains. We were in a valley deeper than the Grand Canyon. But then you have this black sky, a sky blacker than black, as the old Vidicon expression used to be.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
I've often tried to explain the difference between darkness, when you turn out the lights and it's dark in here, or blackness. Blackness is the endlessness of it all. It's hard to comprehend.
But it would be harder. See, people think it was actually hard to get to the moon. Yes, it was hard, certainly, but it would have been way harder to hoax it.
Yes, today. But hoaxing things back then was really sort of the way they did it. I mean, that's how they got into the Gulf of Tonkin. That's
you fake news stories. You know,
there was a lot of fakery going on back then.
You're faking news.
It was the height of the Cold War. And there was a lot of reasons why I thought some fuckery was afoot. Anything is scientific. You should be able to question it, and someone would give you an answer. But there's a bit of emotion and attachment and pride with certain historical accomplishments, like one of them being the moon landing.
It went beyond science. It was a cultural achievement. Since the moon has no atmosphere, then a daytime picture. If you're there in the daytime of the moon, you see a full night sky of stars, even with the sun in the sky as well. You don't see stars in the daytime on Earth, not because they're not there, but because the atmosphere is aglow with scattered light from the sun. If you take away the atmosphere, the sun will still be there, but the sky goes dark.
Well, they lied about this, and we know they lied about that, and they lie about things all
the government
the time.
lies all the
Jessica
time.
Lynch and
But the government have to lie as well as 10,000 scientists and engineers. I mean, think about this. Just think about this. We knew more. If there were ever a state secret that the government wanted to keep, it would be the behavior of President Clinton's genitals.
But that's the other problem. They don't have the telemetry data from the Apollo 11. Isn't that like the most important data? Isn't that like the most important thing? A huge technological achievement. They landed a man on the moon, brought him back, and they're missing the telemetry data? 14,000 something reels?
No. Hey, where did you get this information?
Jamie.
Where'd you get it?
Where'd I get what?
This information. Where is this coming from?
This is coming off the internet.
Exactly. Figuring out how we're being bullshitted is very.
But that's
I'm obsessed with it. How are they bullshitting us? I love that.
See,
shit.
I like that.
I love that.
I like that Eddie's like
I don't
this.
like
I
just
think
want
you need people like this. Like
yes.
he loves it. Like he loves it.
I think this is how crazy I am. I think we're being lied to about fucking everything.
If you don't know, and you don't know that you don't know, that is particularly dangerous. That can graduate someone into adulthood who cannot tell the difference
between what is and is not true about this world.
You're talking about the Earth being flat. Thousands of scientists have looked into it. You think they're all wrong? That's so insane.
You haven't looked into it.
Your images of Earth are paintings. They're CGI. It's not proof. There's still no real time, video, or film of your Earth as a ball.
Looks CGI to me.
There's a lot of sort of technical iteration of trying to get the structures and features we want to exist on the surface. But then there's this whole extra layer of just, tweaking and tweaking and tweaking until it perceptually feels right. And that's where we go, I think, way past the science inputs, and that's just, instinct.
How come when you check the internet it's valid, but when I'm on the internet it's not?
You're not talking about the internet. You're talking about a guy's YouTube video.
No, it's not guys. There's a lot of guys.
I mean, they're even throwing it in your face, folks, that they're showing you stuff that Buck Rogers was flying around in a made-up Hollywood TV show in 1979, and then that's what they're showing you landing.
There's so much fraud when you look into it. I'm like, I don't trust shit. Look into it.
We don't have that. There's a serious fraud going on right now in every space agency worldwide.
We landed 12 astronauts on the moon, brought them back safely. We're talking about going again today. And what NASA will admit, if you probe a little bit, is that we've lost much of the knowledge from the original Apollo missions. In fact, we could not go to the moon today if we had to. Specifically, we've lost the knowledge of how to build the Saturn V rocket. The engineers who built that rocket were retired out of NASA in the 90s, and we've lost the blueprints. No kidding.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Turn off the TV, stop believing CGI, and ask yourself, how come we can't see the Earth in its total global form, as purported allegedly, through scientists, pundits, experts, for centuries?
I guess this is a photo of the Hubble telescope taking a picture of itself. Unbelievable.
Trouble in space this morning as the International Space Crew attempted a spacewalk outside the station. Here's a live look at the astronauts. Well, I don't believe that. Yeah, we.
Now, why would they lie? Oh, I don't know. How about $18 billion annually? If NASA gets to steal $18 billion from their taxpayers, well, even if you don't believe anything else I've told you, the bottom line could be they stole your money for a fake trip to the moon. They stole your money for a fake rover on Mars. They stole your money to show you CGI and cartoon pictures of the globe. $18.4 billion annually? That might be another reason to lie.
Earth's true orientation as a flat circular plane is clearly depicted on the United Nations banner as the seat of world government.
And just another look here as well when it comes to the UN logo, which of course is basically the flat Earth model. And this is from NASA's official website. And this one page, spot the station, of course referring to the so-called International Space Station, which of course does not exist. Let's take a look here. And what do you see? As a form of mockery, they have the flat Earth model on their website.
Joshua Nowicki created a sensation when he was able to snap a picture of the Chicago skyline from the shores opposite of Lake Michigan, near 60 miles away. A Chicago weatherman explained it away as a mirage due to fraction.
This photo, Grandmere State Park, this is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher.
This boast was proven false this past summer by our brother Rob Skiba and Rim Hummer when filming the city from the same side of the shore of Lake Michigan that Joshua took his picture. They rode out to the city by boat, proving that one could see it from such distance and that it was not a mirage. The Chicago skyline, like Lady Liberty, should have been some 2,072 feet below the horizon. Many of you here looking into this issue have, like me, concluded that there is no movement to the earth, nor is there any curvature. It only took me one day of serious examination into this topic to come away with not only this discernment, but knowledge that NASA cannot be trusted and that the moon landings are fictitious.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Those of you here that have concluded the same know without a doubt that no matter what one thinks about the shape of the Earth,
I'm not saying it's round, I'm not saying it's flat.
It is in no way orbiting the sun, as the heliocentrists claim. The Earth is in no way orbiting the sun at a velocity of 1,037 miles an hour. This rate of speed exceeds the speed of sound, and even bullets fired from a 22 caliber or 45 caliber pistol. Think about that for a moment. Science affirms that the Earth is moving faster than the speed of sound or bullets shot from a gun.
As a society, we're so scientifically illiterate, you know, and that causes so much room for speculation. And you're kind of a prisoner of people who are masters of their craft. You're kind of a prisoner to their quote unquote agenda. I don't want to put that bad of a term on it, but you're kind of a prisoner of that because we don't have any choice but to take their word for it,
right,
or to pursue it yourself.
Right, to learn about what they're talking about yourself, to know if they're right or not.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely the case, right?
This fact is also confirmed in the scriptures, for there is not one passage in either the biblical or the extra-biblical material which affirm motion to the earth. In fact, the opposite is true. The Bible clearly states on numerous occasions that the earth is established, fixed, stationary, and unmoving. And so Isaiah declares that the earth does not move, as do the following verses, and I won't read all of them, but 1 Chronicles 16:30, Psalms 93:1, Psalms 96:10, Psalms 104:5, Isaiah 45:18, and other passages. The water which is transferred from the air to the ground during such storms will always run off in a downward flow until finding its level, gather and trickle to form what we see as creeks, streams, ponds, lakes, rivers, and oceans. The dry land that we inhabit is that which is elevated above the sea level. Think about that for a moment as well. All the oceans of the world form one sea level.
Take a look at the bottom. You can see the bottom, of course, or the water level of the boat itself. You can see the waves striking the sides. Now, take a look here. Again, zooming out as the cargo ship completely disappears. Gone. Out of sight.
Well, I do like your answer on that, Zen, because I do think there is a lot to be learned, and I don't think we have the answers. I don't think we have all the answers in any respect. And I think as we explore, and one of the things that Zen mentioned in his opening remarks is about the distrust of NASA. And I have a great distrust of NASA myself. I just, I mean, the government lies to us. I mean, it's a given, and they get paid to do it. And now it's really nothing but disinformation. So it's a huge problem. I want to congratulate the Flat Earth people for taking the time to make what we in the legal business call a collateral challenge on existing knowledge.
If you're really concerned about truth, you've got to check an ego at the door, okay? You do not know everything. A lot of you think you do, but you don't. I certainly don't. Through your school system, through your education that you're so proud of, that builds your whole ego, your whole value in life, It's impossible for you to discard it and admit you were deceived. Let me tell you something. You've been deceived. It's not your fault. You can let go of your ego. Nobody's gonna laugh at you except other people that can't let go of their ego. But the one thing they fear is 300 million people in the United States coming together on one topic and saying, this makes no sense. We need answers. Why is the flat earth so important? Because it shows the deception. There are enough reasonable questions to create reasonable suspicion that we've been lied to. They can't afford to keep being asked. Whether the earth actually turned out to be diamond-shaped, cross-shaped, pear-shaped, there's enough to see that it's not what we've been told. And once that is revealed, everything these governments have done becomes illegitimate. That is why it matters. And that is why they will do anything they can to keep us fighting, keep us distracted, keep us at odds against each other, just like the entire world. Government that truly has your best interest, your freedom at heart, or does it sound like a government that wants to keep you constantly busy on paying attention to anything but what they're doing? And this truth movement is no different. Because as soon as the topic starts going where everybody could actually make a stand and say, hey, wait a minute, this needs to be answered. This is a big one. And I don't care what anybody says, the flat earth, the shape of the earth, is the biggest conspiracy and has been used to manipulate, deceive, and control us all. Flat earth is not a psyop. Flat earth destroys the psyop. Every psyop that's been used to control us for as long as they've known about it. So this system has been in power and control for hundreds of years, ever since they convinced the rest of the world that they didn't know where they live, and created this fantastical scenario to make people feel insignificant and to follow those that appear to know better, that are just better liars, deceivers, that have no conscience, and will do everything and anything to everybody and anybody they can to keep that power. Because people are waking up. And no matter how much they try to suppress this flat earth movement, oh, it's gonna keep moving one way or another. You can see it. People are waking up.
It's preposterous that the Defense Department doesn't know what's happened to this money.
Well, hold on a second. I don't see where the money is.
All right, let's get serious here.
A member of the Atlanta City Council called me right after my legendary remarks, and he said, Cynthia, you know, once you become an elected official, you get the keys to the file cabinet, and they will even allow you to look inside the file cabinet. But Cynthia, you're not supposed to tell what's in it. Well, I told what was in it because I thought it was the right of the American people to know. And that's what members of Congress ought to do.
There's that side, there's the elite that don't want this out, and then there's people trying to get the truth out. So the elite have the control of the media. So how are you going to, they have paid shills. If you don't have paid shills online, strategically pushing the agenda, come on. Okay. They're all over the internet.
Jamie?
We are charged with stewardship over the people's money and the people's values. And the way the money is spent and the policies that are promoted ought to reflect the people's values. And when they deviate, it's up to us to blow the whistle, to sound the alarm, and to tell the truth.
Its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
You don't see the tax scam?
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed.
Come on, man, that's hilarious.
So you say all of them are bad?
How can you see how I can't trust shit?
At the time, there's
and it's
a
okay,
reason to
you know
do
what?
it. But
we
at
got
the time,
new
there's
people.
a reason to do it.
We got new people now.
It is amazing to me that the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, can come before the House Armed Services Committee, on which I serve, and basically admit, yes, we can't find $2.3 trillion, but America can afford it. And by the way, we need to spend more money on defense.
So many things have been conspired and were pulled off throughout history. It's just a common thread throughout history. The real problem with conspiracy theories is that some of them are true.
My second question, Mr. Secretary, according to the Comptroller General of the United States, there are serious financial management problems at the Pentagon, to which Mr. Cooper alluded. Fiscal year 1999, $2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, $1.1 trillion missing. And DOD is the #1 reason why the government can't balance its checkbook.
The second question, I've forgotten what the second question was.
I think Ms. Jonas knows it.
Okay.
That's where people really freak out, because they look at how much people actually did profit from that event. So they go, well, okay, is it possible that someone had a part in letting that event happen, or ignoring the fact that event was going to happen and allowing it to happen? Or is it a matter of people just capitalizing on an event, which is what the most logical point of view is, that they're just incompetent, the event happened, and then they capitalized on it?
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. I appreciate the question. I appreciate your interest in our department's financial condition, and we are working very hard on that program. I've just come back recently.
I understand that you're working hard on it, but my question was, who has the contract? How long have they had that contract, and how much money have we spent on it? The Pentagon has claimed year after year that the reason it can't account for the money is because its computers don't communicate with each other. My second question, Mr. Secretary, is who has the contracts today to make those systems communicate with each other? How long have they had those contracts? And how much have the taxpayers paid for them?
In general, we spend about $20 billion in the Department on information technology systems. The accounting systems are part of that. I can get you the exact number for the record of what we spend on our current, what we call legacy systems, and those that we're moving toward.
The comptroller for the Pentagon told us that $20 billion has been spent trying to get the computers to talk to each other. That is captured on tape, and they still don't talk to each other.
I doubt, to be honest, that people inside the department are going to be capable of sorting this out. I have a feeling it's going to take some folks from outside to come in and look at this and put in place a process that over a period, and I regret to say, but I've seen how long things take. I think it's going to take a period of years to sort it out, and I think it'll probably take the cooperation of the Congress to try to get the system so that you can actually manage the financial aspects of that institution.
They can't all be bad.
And who has the contracts?
That would be a multitude of individuals.
Could you name some, please?
Well, I think off the top of my head, well, I would rather not. I'd rather provide that for the record.
That's not privileged information, is it?
I'm sure it's not.
Well, please. Yeah. And we still have time, so please.
I would be glad to provide for the record. I don't want to talk from the top of my head and be incorrect.
Oh, that's true? Okay, but you got to prove it to me? Otherwise,
the problem isn't that.
I don't care.
No the problem is there's no proving it.
And oops, we also changed U.S. military policy so that we could seize foreign capitals and occupy them. Now, that was the announcement that Donald Rumsfeld made before the United States Congress without any discussion by the American people about what the implications were of, one, having lost so much money. Now, an accountant tells me that while they tell us that the money was lost, that it really is that the money went someplace and they don't want to tell us where it went. So we've got that situation, and then we've got a vast change in the U.S. military posture, and that will allow our military to go into foreign lands, seize their capitals, and then occupy them without one whit of national discussion about what that means. I voted no against all of the preliminary steps that were brought before the Congress to sanction the war against Iraq. But then the president in March of 2003 went into Iraq, and we learned what Donald Rumsfeld meant when he said seize foreign capitals and occupy them. It's a travesty. It's criminal. It's corrupt. And I just don't understand. It continues to amaze me why the American people allow this to continue to happen year after year, budget after budget, without a tremendous outcry.
He did that basically because he was involved in the cover-up to look like he was going to investigate it. Once he got into power, he covered the whole thing up, and it was $5+ trillion by the time they had the last hearing 5 years ago on it. I don't know what it is now. $5 trillion plus missing, and the media is talking about $8.7 billion missing today. No, it's over $5 trillion and growing. I don't know what the new numbers are, because now it's not even looked at. And in Congress, they say, where's the money? And they go, we're not going to tell you. Well, where's the $5 trillion? We're not going to tell you. That's just the end of it. You understand, slave? See, the government is above the law, and the corporations that feed from the trough are above the law. But you, the average citizen, they're passing new laws all the time to make normal behavior illegal so they can get you into their system.
And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the war on waste seems to have been forgotten.
My 03 budget calls for more than $48 billion in new defense spending.
On the good side, we got a fucking nice chance to go to Iraq here.
There's big money
in so much money
in reconstruction, big money in weaponry, big money in oil drilling. There's big money in all of that stuff. Everybody's got their hand in the pie.
$2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America.
You could go on and on and on and on with 9/11. The whole thing is a black hole of lies.
No one can force Mother Nature to open up and share, or can we?
Haarp is one of several ELF wave transmitters located all over the globe. The United States owns and operates 3 of them. One in Gacona, Alaska, another in Fairbanks, Alaska, and one in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. Russia has one in Vasilursky near Nizhny Novgorod, and the European Union has one near Tromsø in Norway. Working in tandem, these transmitters could potentially alter the weather anywhere in the world, triggering massive rainstorms or droughts. Even hurricane steering would be possible by heating up the atmosphere and building up high-pressure domes that could deflect or change the course of hurricanes. The U.S. government is firm in its position that Haarp is just an atmospheric research facility. But is it more than coincidence that since going online, some experts have reported strange weather anomalies?
Katrina, Sandy, more and more catastrophic weather has been punishing people across the globe. Is it because of global warming, or is our weather being manipulated? Should I be terrified?
Absolutely.
As a meteorologist, you believe that there's some sort of technology that's controlling the weather?
Yeah, we're having so many events that are beyond what is normal.
Are the world's governments manipulating the weather and creating huge zombie freak storms that come out of nowhere?
Ski resorts, this is on record, by the way, just the public doesn't know about it. Ski resorts go get insurance, and if they don't get snow, they get enough money to survive. Well, the insurance companies aren't going to pay out on that. So they go, there's more than 100 of these companies I know of. Some of them have got like 30, 40, 50 aircraft, and they hire them, and they fly in and create clouds in the right weather to make it snow. So they don't pay out on the insurance. That's what's going on, and that's just commercial.
Joe, forecasting weather is not that difficult. We've got Ophelia, which continues to intensify just off the east coast of Florida, and that's the big concern. There were storms that were not behaving as they should. Time after time, the guys in D.C. were issuing what they termed a low-confidence forecast. And I'm like, but we see it, we know how big it is, we know how much water is there. Why is it a low-confidence forecast? Being in mainstream, I knew how much news was not delivered.
Of course, there's weather weapon stuff going on. Type in Bill Gates weather modification, geoengineering. They spend, Department of Energy, last time I checked, $5 billion a year in studying weather modification. See, under U.S. Code Title 50, Chapter 32, subsection 1528, paragraph B, it allows chemical, biological, radiological, or any other testing, even lethal, on citizens unsuspecting. The government claims it's allowed to kill us. In the main title, it says it's illegal, but then in the subtitle, it says, unless for law enforcement or research purposes.
It's global weather engineering, geoengineering, and it's been underway for every bit of 30 years.
But then they've been doing that since Vietnam, you know.
But it is on the Weather Channel, and I've interviewed Ben Livingston and the top experts. They could take a clear sky and in one day with like 14 airplanes, have it rain 10 feet of water and flood the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
My name is Ben Livingston. I'm the first person to ever see the cloud with the intention to cause it to do military damage. I know I can say that, and I did it several times before the next person did it.
We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
And we know that they're doing geoengineering. Look, they have geoengineering conferences, and they talk about the fact we need to use our capability to control the weather. The only question is, who gets to adjust the thermostat?
And that would explain why we have these droughts that are historic, why we have biblical floods in Australia.
So you firmly believe in this?
What I didn't know for the longest time is who is doing it to who. Russians against us against Chinese. You know, what is going on?
Well, we've been talking a lot about Irma, so I do want to turn our attention really quickly to Jose, which is actually a major hurricane. As of the 11 o'clock advisory, it's been updated to a Category 4 hurricane. So we've got 2 Category 4 hurricanes in the Atlantic and Caribbean Sea right now.
So they've got those technologies, and that's what earlier callers were saying is, why don't we use the technologies to kill it out in the Gulf? I mean, you can't say one way or the other. It is weird how these storms go. They just sit over a city. Like they're moving around doing it, and they go, oh, just stay right here.
Yeah, it is very unusual, and they said it's if this is natural.
They say it's the worst ever.
Yeah, this is.
So it is unusual, HB.
Very, very unusual.
We know they have their next rad systems. They're set up all across the country, and they can use these systems, such as the X-band radar, to steer hurricanes, to steer storms. They can engineer these storms. They can fabricate them and send them wherever they want. Make it rain, make it flood, make a drought. It says here clearly that the federal government has been involved for over 30 years in a number of aspects of weather modification through the activities of both the Congress and the executive branch since 1947. As you can see here, Defense Department aircraft are involved in these operations, and they work all weather patterns in the mid-Atlantic states. Now keep in mind, this is back in the 70s when this report was released.
They admit there's giant secret weather modification programs going on.
What else is there out there that they have not been forthright about? And that, I believe, is HAARP.
Really?
Seriously. HAARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
The United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas in February 1992. They are located in Gakona, Alaska. The project is called HAARP.
HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
We need to have a debate about how HAARP is used and what are the applications. And in the Congress right now, we have no scientists to speak of. There's no one to evaluate in the closed, secret hearings that take place. They can't take notes, they can't take their staff, and they can't take experts. It's like putting kindergartners in a college setting and expecting them to figure it out. We've got the wrong people making very important decisions that affect all of us on this planet.
Haarp is comprised of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere.
It is today the world's largest radio broadcasting station, but it's not designed to broadcast for human ears. It uses unique patented ability to focus the energy coming out of the antenna field and injects that energy into a spot at the very top of the atmosphere in a region called the ionosphere.
Haarp is like the triggering mechanism for taking the energy within the Earth and manipulating it in specific ways for weapons applications. That's turning the Earth into a weapon.
The amount of energy we're talking about here is 3.6 million watts. To give you an idea of what that is, the largest legal AM radio station in North America is 50,000 watts. Haarp is 72,000 50,000 watt radio stations injecting their entire output into a spot that's about 12 miles across by about 2.5 miles deep by about 90 miles up.
The U.S. military says Haarp is merely being used to study the physical and electrical properties and behavior of the ionosphere for both civilian and defense purposes. But another theory is surfaced. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by Haarp is actually heating up the atmosphere, causing weather changes.
Haarp is being used for weather modification. The military's own record proves it. They've admitted it within their own documents, and yet they still deny it to the public.
Haarp is sending massive energy into the sky that's being reflected down at the Earth in pinpoint locations.
1978, they had the Environmental Modification Convention outlawing the weaponization of these weather control systems. But again, you ask the average American about it, they don't know about it because, well, the media either ridicules it or doesn't cover it. We also have NASA coming out a decade ago and then again last year and saying the Earth is between 20 and 30% more darker in the northern hemisphere than it was just a few decades ago. And that's not because the sun has really changed. It's because, as satellite images show, the condensation trails from jet aircraft are so numerous that they're blocking out the sun. But they're not just ice crystals. He said Bilderberg Group didn't exist. Now they admit it exists. On so many things, they want to just end debate by saying it isn't happening. But if you just research it, don't Google chemtrails, because that's just what the lay term. You look at weather modification, geoengineering, basically terraforming here on the planet, you'll get thousands of university reports, Department of Energy programs. It's going on big time.
Let's put it this way. 20 to 25% of the weather systems are manipulated.
The Haarp thing is a bit more confusing. It's terrifying when you're too dumb to know who's stupid. And unfortunately, that's where I find myself.
Elon Musk is one of the world's most famous innovators. He is the billionaire genius behind SpaceX and Tesla, but he's also generating buzz for a wild theory that perhaps we're not real, we're just living in a big computer simulation.
So the idea is, right, any sufficiently advanced civilization could create a simulation that's like our existence. And so the theory follows that maybe we're in the simulation. Have you thought about this? And
a lot.
Are we...
Yeah, but like, how are they going to justify it if they actually look at it? I think the challenge is getting people to look at things. Any conspiracy theory is going to have a range of plausibility.
Yeah.
From reasonably plausible to completely implausible.
You know, I mean, it's in the headlines. Paul Watson did a report on it that billionaires are meeting in secret and believe we're in a false reality because top mathematicians and the computers are showing it.
I find as I get older, I find that question to be maybe more and more confusing or troubling or uncertain.
The most extreme thing, which all conspiracy theories end up with, is the everything is an illusion. We are living in the Matrix.
Like Mr. Musk thinks, are we living in simulation?
I find it hard to argue against
that possibility. I have the power to program a world inside of a computer. Well, imagine in the future where you have even more power than that, and you can create characters that have, for example, free will, or their own perception of free will. That world will have its own laws of physics and chemistry and biology. Now, you're a character in that world, and you think you have free will, and you say, I want to invent a computer. So you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. So now you lay out all these universes and throw a dart. Which of these universes are you most likely to hit? The original one that started it, or the countless simulations, the daughter simulations that unfolded thereafter? You're going to hit one of the simulations.
When you see the advancement of something like video games, you know, like say 40 years ago, you had video games. The most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously. And you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. It seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past and that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
You should encourage people who are flat earth believers to look at this amazing thing that's happening.
If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality. They'll be indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be, billions of such, computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
The basic idea of simulation theory is to question the reality around us.
It's just that there's some more advanced civilization than us that can recreate the universe that we observe.
Is everything that we know and experience simply either in our imagination or in the manifestation of a world that's being controlled?
If we're in a simulation, do we have free will?
As a philosophy professor at NYU, David Chalmers focuses on the concept of consciousness, questions of what the mind perceives as reality.
How do we know we're not in a simulation where everything is an illusion?
I mean, I don't think I'm being played by somebody in a video game. But then people in video games don't generally think that.
I'm left with the puzzle of trying to figure out whether I live in the Matrix or not.
A lot of people just don't have any idea of any kind of tradition of where we came to these conclusions, so they think that history's starting right now with them.
There's a lot of laziness.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and there's also a lot of confirmation bias. They have these ideas in their head and they don't look into them. Mm-hmm. They're just not interested in really getting into it.
Or it might be that we are somehow confined to a three-dimensional kind of a membrane.
And what I've come to understand is that there are these incredible pictures that contain all the information of a set of equations that are related to string theory. And it's even more bizarre than that, because when you then try to understand these pictures, you find out that buried in them are computer codes just like the type that you find in a browser when you go surf the web.
You're blowing my mind at this moment. So you're saying, are you saying your attempt to understand the fundamental operations of nature leads you to a set of equations that are indistinguishable from the equations that drive search engines and browsers on our computers?
That is correct.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
It's not just sort of resembles computer code. You're saying it is computer code.
That's what we find very, very deeply inside the equations.
When that does happen, how will you be able to know? If it's indiscernible, how will you know if you're in it? And how do you know if you're not in it right now? That's the real question, right?
We are not numbers. I'm not a statistic. I'm not a collection of attitudes and desires. I'm a human being with my own dreams and hopes and problems. And by making me a number, you've removed my human dignity.
I don't know. Bro, take a look at it.
When you look into it.
You look into it.
They have these ideas in their head and they don't look into them. They're just not interested in like really getting into it.
If you listen to scientists and smart people, they're very careful about what they say because they get called out on it.
So lay out all these universes and throw a dart. Which of these universes are you most likely to hit? The original one that started it, or the countless simulations, the daughter simulations that unfolded thereafter? You're going to hit one of the simulations.
And arriving at real conclusions is something they tend to avoid. They'll just have these big discussions and kind of approximate what probably happened.
It's very complicated when you start saying you know things.
The odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
It's so over the top that you just feel alone and have a normalcy bias like Stockholm Syndrome where you go, I'm all alone. Who does that say I am? And that's what we're getting down to here. Is that it's all to make you feel small. And I'm not saying be on some power trip, but I'm saying reality, the universe, basic truth, nature around us, the stars at night, that's all trillions of times bigger than CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Pentagon propaganda, the globalist. And we simply have to decide that in our innate ancestral instincts and our spirit and everything God gave us and our own life experiences, we're going to set out to discover what the truth is, and that we're going to reach out, not with all the truth, because none of us have all the answers, but with the bits we figured out with others. And that together, we're going to put it together and come together and try to develop a cosmology that more closely matches the universe. That no one ever wants to look at real conspiracies because they're complex and hard to understand. They want to just go with, there's aliens living underneath the Capitol.
Dinosaurs aren't real.
I
doesn't come from the government.
Scan do it.
This is basically the biggest thing you could possibly lie about. The best way to brainwash the whole world is to lie to the whole world about what the world is.
I don't know, man. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to believe.
Die, not us.
100K. Okay. So the station made you push Y2K. Wow.
Well, but let me go further. So now I'm going to actually confess here on air. I know I'm evil, but I try to be good. I was on one radio station. I've been on Access TV for a few years. I was on one radio station. I already started a show out of my house that was on like 15 radio stations. So I had that at least. But I was on one big radio station, had the top show at night on a station with Howard Stern. It was killer. It was all over the newspaper, had huge ratings. And I was bringing in like, 20, 30 grand a month, which was just a huge amount for me, building a whole operation out of that at home. And they come to the sales guys and they go, look, for a year, you've not been behind Y2K and you're not letting us have all these big sponsors. And you're going to basically be fired if you don't let us endorse these sponsors and have them on air and say you believe in Y2K.
Hold on a second. So these sponsors were like doomsday stuff, like canned food and shit,
and bunkers and everything else. So I already believe in food.
So they
got to
push Y2K. You got to push that Y2K. Y2K means.
But the station wants to make all this money. Okay?
So the station made you push Y2K. Wow.
Well, but let me go further.
He's crazy and he makes ridiculous amounts of money.
Super male. My weight loss accelerated. My muscle mass increased.
Absolutely. Jones, he doesn't give a fuck.
One of Alex Jones's lawyers said that to hold Alex Jones accountable for the character he plays on air would be like holding Jack Nicholson accountable for the role he played the Joker in Batman. That this is a performance.
Jones' ex-wife claims he's not a stable person.
He's a great guy. I swear to God, he's a great guy.
Okay.
He's just got a ridiculous platform, and he's kind of character. But that's who he is, man.
You think he's a performance artist?
I think there is a part of what he does that is most certainly theater.
Hey, listen, I'm here to warn people. You keep telling me to shut up. This isn't a game. It's so over the top that you just feel alone
and have a normalcy bias like Stockholm Syndrome where you go, I'm all alone. This lie's ridiculous. Why is everyone going along with it? I better go along with it because who does that say I am? And that's what we're getting down to here. Is that it's all to make you feel small. And I'm not saying be on some power trip, but I'm saying reality, the universe, basic truth, nature around us, the stars at night, that's all trillions of times bigger than CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Pentagon propaganda, the globalist. And we simply have to decide that in our innate ancestral instincts and our spirit and everything God gave us and our own life experiences, we're going to set out to discover what the truth is, and then we're going to reach out, not with all the truth, because none of us have all the answers, but with the bits we figured out with others. And that together, we're going to put it together and come together and try to develop a cosmology that more closely matches the universe and that is based on truth.
I'm going to play this Hillary clip where she said that I say 9/11 is an inside job. What I said was the Saudi Arabians, the globalists, are basically funding radical. They're letting these attacks take place. They're using that to take our rights. That was in the news at the time. And translate that over that I'm saying George Bush had a plunger like Wile E. Coyote blowing the building up.
9/11 was an inside job! 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 9/11 was an inside job!
You think Alex Jones is part of the establishment?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't believe the earth is flat, but if the mainstream media started saying it was round, I might question them.
When you are so captured by the fraud that it's heresy to even doubt the world you're in and even question what the mainstream system is saying, because then you're a conspiracy theorist heretic.
Sure, he says a lot of great stuff. I mean, I was an Alex Jones fan, and I agree with 80% maybe of the things that he says. But it's the 20% that not only does he not get into, but he purposely covers up. He will shut off your phone call. He will take down your video. And when you talk about flat Earth, and, oh, that's a fake phone call. Cut him off. That's a flat Earth.
Yeah, and now that we have a U.S. Navy missile instructor and many other experts confirming that the Earth is a flat and motionless plane,
you're being sarcastic. That's a prank call. That's an ad hominem thing where people. There's seminar calls on that where you call in and then you say, "Oh, you're so accurate," and then they add something like the Earth's flat. It's a standard tactic.
I've been telling Alex Jones about flat Earth since 2009.
But good propaganda doesn't need to even be complex or have some edge of truth. It has to be a big, overt, giant lie.
There you go. Alex is just as establishment as Trump is, but the establishment wants you to think both of them are anti-establishment. And that's how their WWE game works, where they give you their polar opposites and you pick one or the other, and you're controlled either way. I think he knows about me. That's why he deleted me off of your YouTube video. He's a complete gatekeeper, and it's so obvious to someone like me. That's why he censored your videos, because he totally canceled. That's why your videos were allowed up for, the first video was up for 5 hours before he took it down, where you mentioned my name over and over again. And then the next video, you did the same thing. That's what controlled opposition does. Controlled opposition is there to divide any sort of legitimate movement that might come up. Yeah, if your truth has limits, then you're what's known as a gatekeeper. And that's exactly what he is. He's a gatekeeper so that you won't ever get into the idea that we haven't been on the moon. You'll never question any sort of cosmology or NASA. You'll never understand that the Earth is flat and that that's the biggest conspiracy of all of them.
No one ever wants to look at real conspiracies because they're complex and hard to understand.
This is what I'm coming to. It's full of criminals, etc., who seek to run the world and will kill anybody who gets in their way. And you are almost, and have been, a lone crusader powering against them.
No, that's
so how come? How are you still alive?
Why am I alive?
Well, no, which is listen,
Why am I alive?
which is the explanation? One, they don't exist, or two, you're part of the conspiracy.
No, let me
Tell
so stupid. Tell him you're not.
I'm not either. Tell him.
Well,
These fucking people think there's a goddamn conspiracy.
Well,
and
here's
Bill
what
Hicks
happens.
pretended to die.
Here's what happens. They think it's a flat Earth too.
This is my pieces are flying off of it.
Why does he legitimize quacks like Alex Jones? It creates a false equivalence problem.
Oh, no. Alex Jones has been my friend for 20 years. He's fucking crazy. I showed everybody how crazy he was on my podcast by getting him high and drunk and have him talk about interdimensional child molesters. If you watch that and you think I'm legitimizing Alex Jones in some sort of a way, then you're just you're looking at things in a very cookie-cutter way. You're deciding that this is what I've done. He doesn't give a fuck.
Really?
They asked him a
About his
question about his
custody
kid.
battle?
They asked him a question about his kid. He couldn't remember. He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I had a large bowl of chili for lunch today. I can't remember." He's fucking crazy.
Yeah, you were totally down for, you were the moon hoax crusader. Something?
No.
What
Listen, man.
I got a question for you, man. Okay. So, I've been a fan of you for a long time, right? So what made you make the switch from like being a moon landing denier to like
That's a good question.
Crazy if you don't.
No. Listen, man. Here's my issue. My issue is, how can I even argue it? How is it possible that I even have points?
You're a moon guy for a while, right? Is that
Yeah,
right?
well, listen, my issues with not believing that people went on the moon, a lot of it had to do with a friend who had an uncle who worked at Rocketdyne. This guy was convinced that there was no way to do it. He was an engineer, and he said they were so far away from doing it that the fact that they did it, and they did it 7 times, but since looking at it, the weight of all the evidence, I reserve the possibility that some things were horseshit based on a lot of photographic evidence that they did fuck with. There's no way that that was a hoax. There's no way.
There's no way people went on the moon. There's no way.
Can't cover this thing up if somebody reputable starts talking about UFOs. You can co-opt the person and say, hey, you want to know UFOs? We'll show you the real deal. But not only can you never talk about it publicly, you have to be a debunker publicly.
I'll tell the government right now, tell you right now if you're listening, NSA, CIA, I'm available, okay? If you show me all the real wreckage, I swear to God, I will make fun of that crap to the end of time. I'll make up stories. I'll lie to my mother. I don't care. You show me a UFO, I'll lie to my mother.
Joe Rogan, I know, he didn't tell me this, I learned from other sources, and I talked to him about it. He said, yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. He got threatened about 5 years ago. And he got threatened really serious, and him and his family, if he didn't stop getting into conspiracies, because they knew how popular he was. They had him do some TV show that made fun of it all and all the rest of it. Not say he was a sellout, but it was a process when that show was starting. He wasn't even aware of what was happening to him at the time. And I'll just say this. Joe disagrees, he can say it, but he knows this is true. And so that's why I was on the show, and he was like finishing my sentences. Joe knows as much of this as I do. He learned about all this. He talked about it, and they dropped by and they said, you know, you want what you're doing, your family, shut your mouth.
That's the government trying to control me. They can't handle the truth.
You don't think the moon landing is real?
No, I don't. No. Do you?
Yeah.
Why do you think the moon landing is real? Why don't you tell me why?
I saw it on television.
Oh, you're a genius. Oh, beep that. Hit
Okay,
that.
we'll bleep it. We'll bleep it. No, it's okay. We got
That's
it.
genius. You saw it on TV? That's awesome. I'm going to show you some CGI. I'm going to show you King Kong. I saw that on TV, too. There's an 80-foot gorilla. He's running around kidnapping white chicks.
So you think we went to the moon?
That's not what I asked you. I said, how much did you look into that?
Do you think we went to the moon?
Eddie, answer my fucking
How come you don't
question.
answer my
You talk
question?
ridiculous.
See,
because
you're
you
trying to
talk
add-
in circles.
Okay,
You're
all
talking
right.
in circles.
I am?
They're ridiculous conversations. Absolutely. I don't know enough about astrophysics, about space travel, about the science that's, you know, the work that's been done, about how to get a rocket to the moon and back. I definitely don't know enough. Neil Tyson is working for the man.
Here it is. If you look at, like, the fuel that was loaded up into the Saturn V rocket, you can calculate where that fuel could take that rocket. It's to the moon and back. So they're not going to the Piggly Wiggly, right,
Yeah.
in the Saturn V.
No.
Really, nigga?
And if you want to think the world is flat, go right ahead. So you spin, you know, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. Yeah. Gets wider in the middle. And so Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier. Yeah. Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
This guy right here says, no, it's pear-shaped. Then, of course, you got NASA pumping out pictures all the time as a perfectly spherical Earth. And you got the Bible saying, nah, no, you live in a snow globe. So, which one is it?
See, people think it was actually hard to get to the moon. Yes, it was hard, certainly, but it would have been way harder to hoax it.
Yes, today.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Because that was the decade where we lost confidence in our government.
Yeah.
You know, that was where
Well,
that
for good
happened.
reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it was proven with Watergate, and it was proven, well,
Yeah.
it was, they
Over
didn't
and
even
over.
know about the Gulf of Tonkin incident
Over and
back
over,
then.
over and over, it was demonstrated.
And the idea that they were able to do that in 1969, but haven't been able to repeat it since.
It would have been easier to simply go to the moon
Mm-hmm.
than to fake all of that. That's my point.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
Have you been paying attention to what's going on with Bill Nye? Scientists are all going after Bill Nye
Bill
now.
Nye, the Weimar guy?
What's Weimar?
Weimar Germany was right before Hitler. He's not even a scientist.
No, he's not a scientist.
He's a con man.
The original show that he did
Right.
many years ago where they talked about
Gender.
how gender is from chromosomes. Isn't he an engineer?
Yeah, but he's not a climatologist.
He's not a scientist, and he's also changing his tune. And now he's completely gone off of that.
Right.
And his new thing had this woman who belonged in some fucking Venice theater group, like barking out at a poetry slam, some unbelievably god-awful song. And this motherfucker put it on Netflix on a science show. This is so not science.
But that stuff is explicitly propaganda. It's meant to be propaganda. There's this ideology that he's fallen into where it's a complete religion which is complete divorce from reality. And stuff like this.
It's full left-wing.
You have to kind of drink the Kool-Aid to be putting this out as your product.
I feel like he's been influenced, you know? So I feel like he's just been influenced by the influencers.
Well, certainly he's getting rewarded for it.
If you'd like, look at pictures from space where you see the Earth as a sphere. Those pictures are not fake. If you want to get into it, the Earth isn't quite a sphere.
Scientists are wrong all the time.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
It's a little bleh. Its spin is a little bleh, stretched it, made it slightly oblate. So, the process of testing claims, the world is flat, the world is round, is what we call science.
The way we teach science is you're just some empty vessel and we pour the science into you and then you regurgitate it.
Science is about stating a theory, then attempting to disprove it. You want people to disprove it because that makes your theory or hypothesis stronger. He doesn't want that. Why?
Well, because he doesn't want the facts and the science out there, because then he might lose his show.
Bill Nye, the science mascot for Botox reporters, scolded CNN for having an actual real physicist on the program to debate him.
And I will say, much as I love the CNN, you're doing a disservice. It looks like a table or a board. Now, once in a while, you might see mountains or hills, but those are just like little bumps on what looks like a flat Earth. And this boat? Well, it's like a boat. Anyway, watch. As ships sail away, they don't disappear all at once. No, first, the bottom will disappear. See, the bottom of the ship is gone. Now we can see midway up, and then the whole thing disappears. If you have a claim that can't be tested, that's what we call pseudoscience.
But Bill, there's no big glass dome over the Earth.
How many of you believe your government is 100% honest and can be trustworthy?
Ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector good. Ag thought.
Why do you believe what you believe?
As a society, we're so scientifically illiterate, you know, and that causes so much room for speculation. And you're kind of a prisoner of people who are masters of their craft. You're kind of a prisoner to their quote unquote agenda. I don't want to put that bad of a term on it, but you're kind of a prisoner of that because we don't have any choice but to take their word for it.
NASA has been proven to be liars time and time again.
Trouble in space this morning as the International Space Crew attempted a spacewalk outside the station. Here's a live look at the astronauts. Well, I don't believe. I don't think that's. Yeah,
No. The statement, most secrets get out.
Right.
For all you know, that's 100% of the secrets.
It could be. Yeah, you're right.
It's just a simple, untestable fact.
60 years ago, when the Russians beat us into space, we didn't deny Sputnik was up there. We didn't argue about the science or shrink our research and development budget. We built a space program almost overnight, and 12 years later, we were walking on the moon.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Doesn't that look like a guy just got yanked up in the air? Look, check this out.
For a 380-pound guy, that's pretty good. They threw that out. Yeah, jump flat-footed, straight in the air. 300, about 4 feet.
They fell down. Wow. Look at this. Whoa. I mean,
that ain't any fun, is it?
what are they doing? These people that believe that no humans have ever done it before, because the only people that did it were the Apollo astronauts, and there's no one's been able to do it since. And every single space station flight, every space shuttle flight, all of them are within, what, 400 miles?
Easily, yeah. I mean, space station is 2-something. Hubble is a little higher.
The only times where human beings have ever been past that was the Apollo program.
Mm-hmm.
So for the conspiracy-minded, of course that comes up. Well, no, you can't survive in deep space. No one's ever done it except some people in the 60s, and no one believes that today. And the reason why you can't get out there is because of solar flares and radiation, all this jazz. So if they're right, then it would be easier to fake it. When people look at human beings that have actually been through, the last time someone did it was 1972. That was the last time a human being has been more than 400 miles from the Earth's surface. That freaks people out.
No,
because every single technological achievement from 1969 is easier, cheaper, and faster to reproduce today.
Having seen hundreds of rocket firings when I was employed by Rocketdyne, I know that the jet of the lunar module lander, the lunar lander, would have created an enormous crater. It would have scoured the moon's surface. It would have tossed up rocks, sand, everything, and created a crater maybe so large that the entire lunar lander could have sunk into it. After all, we're dealing with a 10,000-pound thrust engine, and yet, if you look at pictures of the lunar lander on the moon, there is no disturbance whatsoever under the lunar lander's rocket.
And no dust deposited in the pads, the cup-shaped pads at the bottom.
That's another good point. We want to get into it. The Earth isn't quite a sphere.
Scientists are wrong all the time.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
It's a little, its spin is a little stretched. It made it slightly oblate.
It's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Then, of course, you got NASA pumping out pictures all the time as a perfectly spherical Earth. Which one is it?
Now, why would they lie? Oh, I don't know. How about $18 billion annually? If NASA gets to steal $18 billion from their taxpayers, well, even if you don't believe anything else I've told you, the bottom line could be they stole your money for a fake trip to the moon. They stole your money for a fake rover on Mars. They stole your money to show you CGI and cartoon pictures of the globe. $18.4 billion annually. That might be another reason to lie.
But the thing about hoaxing things back then, the thing that was so compelling to me was that hoaxing things back then was really sort of the way they did it. I mean, that's how they got into the Gulf of Tonkin. That's
you fake news stories.
And then the fact that the rock that they had given to Holland turned out to be a piece of petrified wood. You know, there's a lot of weirdness to the moon landing conspiracy. If anything is scientific, you should be able to question it and someone would give you an answer. But there's a bit of emotion and attachment and pride with certain historical accomplishments, like one of them being the moon landing, that forbid people from actually questioning.
Well, it went beyond science.
First of all, I don't see where the money is. I don't see. Hold on a second. I don't see where the money is to have all these hoaxes.
You don't see the tax scam with the rovers?
No
1969,
industry.
they faked 6 moon missions. How am I supposed to believe anything from that?
Those are not the same people.
How?
Even if that was true, those are not the same people, and Richard Nixon isn't alive anymore.
So you just write them all off, though, Eddie? Just off that one exception?
You got to prove it to me. I don't need to believe it.
But
I don't need to believe it. It's not gonna. How is it gonna? I don't believe it. But if it's true, I don't give a shit. Okay, it's true. Oh, that's true. Okay, but you got to prove it to me. Otherwise,
the problem isn't that.
I don't care.
The problem is there's no proving it.
I guess this is a photo of the Hubble telescope taking a picture of itself. Unbelievable.
They faked 6 moon missions.
But that doesn't matter. These are not the same people.
So because they're different
time.
people, they're not going to. I don't
All
understand
over the
that
world,
logic.
Well, the logic is just because someone faked something one point in time before you were alive, doesn't mean that those same human beings have managed to download their brains into everybody that ever did that job for the rest of time, because they're not the same humans.
Things are fully choreographed and edited in advance to make sure that there's nothing too obvious that you can see that gives away that this is a suspension in front of a blue screen hoax. The moon landing stopped in 1972 and we haven't been back. We haven't been beyond the Van Allen belts.
Open to the fact that maybe they faked it, because now you're open to the fact that maybe they faked
it. Maybe they did fake that, but you can't just lump. And I'm not even saying they did.
That's the greatest achievement of mankind.
But at the time, there's
and it's
a reason
okay.
to
You know
do
what?
it. But
we
at
got
the time,
new
there's a
people.
reason to do it.
We got new people now. Come on, man. That's hilarious.
So you're saying all of them are bad?
How can you see how I can't trust shit from NASA?
But it's
they
not
fake
that you. But do you
so I
understand
should
that
trust
it's not
them
that you
because
can't trust shit?
Because maybe they all those bad people have died and they're all old, and the new NASA, they're the good NASA.
They can't all
You're gonna
be
believe
bad.
that.
What we were not reminding ourselves is that the only reason why we went to the moon is because we were at war with Russia, with the Soviet Union. That is the only reason at all. It was not a natural flow of what our technology would have done, because it didn't flow out of our economic creativity. It came out of our urge to not die. And so when you have that scenario, of course we didn't go past the moon after 1972. We were no longer competing with Russia to do that.
I would argue that that's a nice, convenient thing to say, but the reality is we still kept up as far as other avenues of military, whether it's building better bombs or faster planes.
Of course.
And it was all about military superiority.
Of course.
Like, wouldn't we be the first to set up a base on the moon?
We did. We got to the moon first. And then we said, we win. And so we have repainted that era in our memory as we are the pioneers, and we did it because we explore. No.
This is basically the biggest thing you could possibly lie about. The best way to brainwash the whole world is to lie to the whole world about what the world is.
They've stolen our mind from us and stuck us on a cartoon ball.
It is photoshopped, but it has to be.
Everything in the sky revolves around us, just as it appears if you look up and use your own eyes, your own senses. The vanishing point of perspective from your point of view, which is what the horizon line is. It is not the curvature of the earth, as you've been taught.
Look into it.